We're going to talk now just briefly about how to inspire your congregation and how to communicate with them and get them up to speed with what you're doing. Remember, they haven't talked about this as much as you have, and to be quite honest with you, 75% of your congregation is probably fairly marginally involved anyhow. But they're interested in what the future is going to look like. And how do you bring them up to speed about the future story and the development and the direction you want to go as a church is a question that you have to be very intentional about as you go into the future. We've put into your packet a sample report for the congregation. This sample report talks about, number one, the issues that we learned about our current condition. It's about naming the facts, not evaluating, not saying you're good or bad, naming your current condition. The second thing is, what is that future story that you develop? What does it look like? That's where you get to use that future story as a compelling vision about what your church is going to look like in the future. A third section then deals with supporting evidence. How do you support this? What kind of things led you to think that this would be important to include into the future story? What kind of trends did you see in the community? What kind of trends did you see in our congregation that made this important? Another area that we talk about is possible barriers to overcome. The barriers might be financial, they might be about the building, they might be about the community, but they might be about the attitudes of the congregation as well. So being specific and naming those attitudes and naming the barriers that you need to overcome is going to be very important. And then finally, how might we get there is listed as well. How do we see ourselves making this happen? You know, it might be selling the building, or it might be developing a partnership with somebody else that can help you develop a ministry within your building. All those different ways of talking about how you're going to live into that future story. Well, I have 3 tips for you in terms of working with the congregation that you might want to keep in mind for all of this. Number 1 is stay out of the weeds. A lot of times when you develop a report like this and turn it into a congregation, they want to argue about specific parts of it that they don't like, or specific parts that don't match what they sense is their reality. It's okay for people to have disagreement about what they think the reality is, and it's important to just acknowledge that they said that. But don't go into saying, let's work this out in a large group setting. Let's work this out where we all have to agree. You're not going to get 100% agreement on any kind of sense of reality anyhow. So why waste a lot of time in a congregational meeting trying to get that? So stay out of the weeds. The second part is receive the report. Don't have the congregation vote to approve the report. Ask them to receive the report. There's a real difference between approval and receiving. If they approve the report, then they want to go back into the weeds. They want to know exactly how much money they're authorizing, all those details. And that's not what we're looking for. This is an overarching image of what the congregation is going to look like in the future that we're trying to get buy-in. So all we're asking for them to do is to receive this report and maybe acknowledge all the hours of hard work that you have done as a committee. The third thing that we want to talk about in all things, throughout the report, throughout any of the conversations that you have with the congregation, always go back to why you exist. You do not exist to be an institution. You exist to be the hands and feet of Jesus in the world, and to be faithful to that gospel, and to be true disciples of Jesus Christ. And so when people want to argue about the weeds, it's usually about institutional vitality, or they want to approve a report, it's about institutional living. What we're trying to do is to get the church to remember why we exist. We exist to serve others. In fact, we're the only organization on the face of the planet that doesn't exist for the benefit of our members, but for the benefit of those that are outside. That's in the Bible, trust me. Well, I hope that all this hard work will be well received by your congregation as you go into the future. And I think if you follow these 3 rules, you'll be in much better shape to get this received than if you get into the details and want to start fighting for approval.